Okay, I just want to say first and foremost, hey, I'm aimless. I make Valorant YouTube videos. That being said, I'm gonna go really hard on this game in this video, and I'm gonna start out with some good design decisions, just because I don't want to seem like too much of a hater. But that being said, if you're one of those people that's just like, just quit the game if you don't like it, man. Just quit the game if you don't like it. Stop talking. You're the type of person that just watches something burn and explode without helping at all. Okay? Anyways, let me get into this. Some of my favorite game design decisions with Valorant is that they have simple map design geometry within the game, so you don't get killed from corny ass angles like you're playing Rainbow Six Siege every round. I think that's one of the best design decisions they made in the game. Like, all the angles and geometry is really easy and intuitive to understand, and you don't get in a lot of frustrating moments. By the way, one of the worst games for this is Apex Legends. It is so fucking bad when you walk up to a wall and you're like, oh, this looks climbable, but guess what, motherfucker? It's a 35 degree, or it's a 55 degree angle. You can only climb walls if they're above 70 degrees, and you can only run up them if they're 45 degrees. So guess what, motherfucker? You're gonna try to climb this wall, the enemy's gonna come up behind you and shoot you in the ass while you're fucking humping the wall like a fucking idiot, okay? That game has some of the worst geometry. Don't get me started on Apex Legends, actually. I fucking hate Apex Legends. It's one of the worst games ever made. One of the worst FPS games ever made. I don't care. I literally don't care. It's really good for practicing your tracking, though. Anyways, that being said, I love that, by the way. I go into talking about good design decisions for Valorant, and I just end up hating on Apex Legends. That's funny as fuck. Another good design decision from Valorant is wall banging corners. I bet I don't know why they added that, but I bet they added it to help with networking. You know how in games you always get killed behind walls and shit? That's because of an inherent problem with networking. And I think they added the wall banging corners solely to mitigate the frustration with that. Which, if that's what they did, that's actually genius. That was such a good game design decision. It's actually genius. And if you hate it, it's like, okay, you hate it? What do you just want to be able to be killed behind walls? Because the reality is networking isn't instant, right? Information takes time to travel, so there's going to be problems with ping regardless. So for them to add that and help mitigate it is really a really good game design decision. Now, another good game design decision was they attempted to make non-ultimate abilities not get you free kills. That's a really, really good job. And there's some exceptions if you combo abilities with agents, but for the most part, they did a really good job with that as well. That was a really good game design decision. Okay, now with that out of the way, I want to talk about kind of game design philosophy. So first and foremost, if you disagree with any of those points, any of these next statements I make, you're probably just going to disagree with the changes I should make from the game, because everything builds off of these like philosophies that I have. All right, so number one, when you're creating a game, you want to, when you find a problem you're trying to solve, there's multiple ways to solve it, and you're trying to pick the one that causes the least frustration in the player, because you're trying to maximize the enjoyment of the experience of the game, right? So a good example of this would be, and now I'm going to start nitpicking in Valorant, but in games, there's a couple ways to modify like the power of weapons in long distance gunfights, right? One way to do that is to add a bullet inaccuracy, which Valorant has added, and another way to do that is to reduce the amount of damage weapons do at long ranges, which Valorant has also added. And then there's also a third way, which is make weapons projectile, which will inherently nerf them at range, but Valorant didn't do that. Anyways, I think having both of those options, number one, I think the better option is just reducing the damage of weapons at range. That's all you should do. But for some reason, Valorant added both of those, and so sometimes you'll get situations where your gun is on their head and you just miss. And it's like, why did you add that to the game? You've already made the weapon worse in long-range gunfights. Why would you also add another thing? Like, you've already reduced the damage at range. So now it's possible to get situations where you're using a Phantom, you click on somebody's head, the bullet misses, then you click on somebody's head, the next bullet hits their head, does 140 damage, and then you get shit on, because guess what, motherfucker? They added both of them. I think that was a bad game design decision. I think they should have just stuck with reducing damage. And don't get me wrong, I know when you get into really big game arenas and shit, you need to have some sort of bullet inaccuracy at longer ranges. Otherwise, you get perspective issues. But that's a whole like in-depth thing. It's basically a problem that Valorant doesn't have, because the longest range gunfight you take is like 60 to maybe 70 meters, right? Anyways, game design philosophy 1, solution of least resistance. Number 2, make it fun, then make it fair. All right? It's really easy to make a game that basically is fair, right? You just got to give both people the same abilities. But guess what? If Valorant, everybody had raised rockets and they just shot each other, it wouldn't be that fun. It'd be fun maybe for like a couple games, and then you'd be like, all right, I'm never touching this game again, right? So you need to focus on making it fun and then make it fair. The most important point. All right, next gameplay philosophy is having something annoying happen in your game, annoying or frustrating, and then having downtime before the player can get into a new event occurring is really bad. And so one of the best examples of this for Valorant in particular would be dying to some bullshit ability, or ability that feels bullshit, because those are two different things, right? An ability actually being bullshit is going to be more indicated by statistics, and then ability feeling like it's bullshit is going to be more indicated by whether or not you created like a well-designed game. And so yeah, annoyance, dying, and then having to sit and spectate your teammates till next round, that's problematic, right? So that's what the importance of making sure your abilities don't feel annoying to the opposing team, right? And so this is my belief for when it comes to creating abilities in Valorant, how to create them in a way that's not annoying, right? Number 1 is that abilities that buff yourself are fine. They almost always never feel shitty to the enemy, because it gives you a little bonus, and then it's like a little stim is like fine, right? Oh, he's moving a little bit faster across my screen. I should have just hit my shot. That's my bad. Or he fired a little bit faster, but I could have shot him. You know, it doesn't feel that bad from your perspective, because they're getting buffed, right? The abilities that really feel bad are the ones that fuck with your ability to play the game, right? Getting stunned feels really bad because you can't play the game anymore. You can't do anything, right? Getting grav-netted feels really bad because you can't play the game anymore, right? And I'm not advocating for these abilities to be removed from the game. No, I actually think that's fine, but you need to add some counterplay to those abilities, right? You need to add counterplay that wouldn't otherwise exist in abilities that buff the opponent, because then it makes it feel better, like there's something I could have done, right? I need to stop saying right. So a good example of good counterplay employment is with flashes, right? With flashes, you can turn them. I just said it again. With flashes, you can turn them, and then you avoid them, and you get back into the gunfight, and the opponent still gets a slight advantage because your crosshair placement gets messed up, but it's not huge, and it's not gonna frustrate you beyond belief. If flashes were so fast that you couldn't ever dodge them, they'd be annoying as fuck, and they'd be completely unfun to play against, right? I'm actually gonna fucking blow up. With that being said, Valorant is consistently adding more and more abilities that fuck with your ability to play the game and don't have counterplay. Number 1, ISO Shield. ISO Shield necessarily fucks with your ability to play the game in that you can't use an operator or a judge or any gun that is not super fast firing to break the shield. And it's really, really, really insidious in the effect it has. And I think people were complaining about it more, but they've kind of stopped now because the neon slide became such a huge problem that they forgot about the ISO shield. The ISO shield is still unbelievably toxic for the game state. It needs to be fixed. Number 2, the Phoenix Flash. Nobody's talking about this, and it's not that big of a problem, but they were supposed to fix Phoenix like a couple acts ago, And when they buffed him, all they did was they made his flash so fast it's basically undodgeable. And it's annoying. It's annoying. It's not a huge problem. It's not game ending like, oh, time to uninstall. But it makes the game worse. And I think we can all agree that undodgeable flashes make the game slightly worse. The only instance I could think of a flash where it should maybe be undodgeable is like Vize's flash. If it was visible, right? Because then you'd see it on your screen. You'd be like, okay, if they choose to flash that in this moment, I will be blind. And you could choose to, you understand the situation you're in, right? But Phoenix's flash, it's just, oh, I just died. Oh, he had a undodgeable flash there. And you know, I know it's like, oh, you could just dodge it. It's still dodgeable. It's not. Radiant players inconsistently dodge it when they expect it. Radiant players will see a Phoenix. They'll be like, oh, he's probably going to flash. And then maybe they'll dodge it. That's not really dodgeable. And it's problematic. Next, Deadlock Net. So when they released Deadlock, she sucked. And then they were just like, let's just make the net so big, you can't, it will hit you no matter what. It's like, this net, the net is literally worse than a stun, by the way. Being made so you can't crouch or do anything. Okay, it might not be worse than a stun, just because of how bad stuns are, but it's up there, and it's undodgeable. I saw one video where apparently if you jump at the right time, you can dodge it. If that's an intended gameplay mechanic, that's a good feature. With that being said, I don't know if that's a gameplay mechanic, and the window is also too tight on it to hit it consistently. Well, apparently it's not too tight on it, but to react to that while playing the game and dodge it, maybe it's too early to tell, but it seems problematic in its current state. They also buffed Neon Slide to where it was overpowered, and that would obviously be overpowered. I don't know why the devs thought that wouldn't be overpowered. Making Neon Slide more accurate when you're sliding than literally when you're standing still and aiming. I don't really know what they were thinking there. That was kind of a brain off change. One final change I want to mention, because I'm going in pretty hard. The Outlaw was a horrible addition to the game. The Outlaw is literally an operator on eco rounds, except it's an operator that you don't strafe slowly with, and you can quickscope with it, and it has this higher zoom rate. It's literally ridiculously powerful, and they just added it to the game. And also, it's not even bad when the opponent has heavy armor. Like, they said, oh, we added it so we could nerf light armor, because light armor is being bought too much. Like, hey, buddy, this is good against heavy armor, too. You just added a weapon that's good against both armors and is an operator on half the rounds in the game. That doesn't really make sense, in my opinion. I don't understand the decision making behind that decision. Now, all of these things make the game like 1% worse, but the problem I really have is that the amount of additions they're making to the game that make it slightly worse is accelerating over time. Like 2 out of the last 4 agents they've added have had a problem with this, and it doesn't even look like they're going back to fix the old agents and like rework them in a healthy way before adding new ones. And it's making the game worse, right? And I want to talk about, I guess now I'll touch on maps a little bit too, because maps are a problem. When Valorant first started, every single map had like a gimmick that made it unique and made it created like a new gameplay experience that was interesting in a way. And they're kind of moving away from that more and more. Like 3 out of the last 4 maps, I will give Abyss credit. I don't like Abyss as a map, but I respect that they tried to make something new and different. I can at least respect that. But 3 out of the last 4 maps, Pearl, Lotus, Sunset, Abyss. Pearl, Lotus, and Sunset, like, these maps have nothing new or interesting about them. You added it's like, we already have Ascent, guys. Can we do something new? And with Lotus, it's like, the doors were supposed to be unique, but it's like, we already have Haven, guys. Can we do something new? They're making... Before that, they had lots of hits. They really did. Fracture was good. People hated Fracture at first. Delusional people. It was interesting. And they're not trying as much as they were. And they're adding... And the thing that scares me is they're adding new maps that are more boring, and they're adding agents that are more problematic in terms of gameplay design. And it seems like the rate this is happening at is accelerating, which is problematic. And I think they need to basically push out updates that fix these things. Anyways, those are the main problems I think the game has right now. I'm going to go into like more nitpicky stuff right now. I recorded a lot of fucking footage to give myself enough time, but it looks like I'm not going to have to use it. Now I'm going into like more nitpicky stuff that I just think doesn't make sense from a gameplay design perspective. And just some minor like thoughts I had. But I was thinking about this game, especially some aspects of the gunplay, and I kind of realized like they literally stole the gunplay in this game from CS:GO. It's not surprising, right? Like everybody knows that. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, and this is going to sound like hater material here. I don't play CS:GO, but I just thought this was funny. Every good thing in this game with gunplay was stolen from CS:GO, which I think is hilarious. Like, think about the new things they've added that weren't in CS:GO and whether or not they've had a positive or negative impact on the game. They added the classic right click. The classic right click has been overpowered. It's been overpowered. They've nerfed it multiple times. It's still probably overpowered. It just doesn't need to be in the game, and for some reason they're like trying to rescue it. Anchoring bias, like they should have just removed it, or sunken cost or something, because it shouldn't be in the game, but it's still in the game, so that's fun. The Bucky right click. Few know the Bucky right click was unbelievably overpowered when it was first released, and they nerfed it so quick after the community figured it out, and then they just killed it. In my opinion, all you had to do to the Bucky right click to make it fair and balanced was make it so it was fully inaccurate and unusable unless you were standing still like you would with a rifle, and then make it do like 100 damage or 125 damage. That's all you had to do to balance it. And then they just basically made it useless without removing it from the game, which is like, why would you make something useless and not just remove it from the game? What is that? Next, the Stinger burst fires. Bro, Stinger burst fire is so funny. The Stinger in general was ridiculously overpowered, and then they gave it a burst fire on the alt fire, or when you're ADS'd, and you literally could kill players who are rifling with the burst fire. What the fuck was that? And also, remember the Stinger used to cost 850, or was it 950? The SMGs in this game are still overpowered, but that's like a whole nother thing. But it's crazy that they then gave it an alt fire that was as powerful as a rifle, right? And I can't really think of any other things that the devs have added that wasn't in CS:GO. But, I mean, obviously the Outlaw, but I mean, we all know how that's going. The Outlaw is fucking obviously overpowered. And the last thing they stole from CS:GO was bullet tagging, and then bullet tagging as an addition is fine, but the way they implemented it was horrible, in my opinion. In CS:GO, bullet tagging makes sense because the weapons have predictable spray patterns, so you're encouraged to spray your weapon through the gameplay. In Valorant, they made the spray patterns randomized, which means you're not encouraged to spray, you're encouraged to burst fire. But then having bullet tagging instantly affect your opponent's movement in the way that it does, then encourages spraying. So it seems like those two gameplay design choices run juxtaposed to each other, in that one of them encourages bursting and one of them encourages spraying, and it just doesn't make sense, in my opinion. And you can argue on that if you want. I think bullet tagging is fine, but having it trigger a small amount of time after you've been shot or after an audio cue plays would make it feel a lot better, and also give you the effect you wanted when it came to slowing the player and making them easier to hit. Anyways, I think that covers everything, and I want to make clear that I don't hate this game. I actually really like this game, and I just think these decisions and these gameplay design choices they seem to have shifted over time. When the game was first releasing, they didn't make a lot of these mistakes, and now it seems like it's happening more and more. And I don't know if that's due to a shift in like the development team or whoever works there, or what exactly is causing it. But it's seemingly becoming more problematic, and it is making the game worse at this point. I mean, fucking Tens quit the game. There's one. If one of your best players is quitting the game because he doesn't like the way it's going, I mean, that says something. But also, he said it's too much of a hero shooter or something like that. So maybe he just didn't know what the game was about when it first started, and now that the competitive scene's developed, he doesn't like it as much. That could also be the case. But yeah, I mean, this game's really good, and I want to see the game get better, because also I'm pretty fucking good at the game. So can we please put all the pieces in the right way? Also, that fucking shot right there on screen where I missed the jet, even though I was perfectly on target. That's exactly what I was talking about earlier. And yeah, anyways, these videos are supposed to be about my training. These last couple weeks, I have still been training, even though I haven't posted. I do think that I'm way more in sync with my crouching now. Like, way more in sync with my crouching. And I felt like in these games... Oh, yeah. I drank caffeine before I played these games, and it literally felt like I couldn't aim. I actually felt so bad these games. I did okay. I did pretty good. But it felt like I literally couldn't aim. And I'm probably not going to be drinking caffeine again. That shit actually screws up my aim so badly. I was looking at my hand afterwards and it was shaking so much. I think I'm getting more synced up with my crouching. I don't think there's really much else to say. I think it's just time of hours in at this point. But yeah, that's all. Goodbye.